You are not failing in your spiritual journey. What you're sensing is the scent of ashes from your old self. The pain right now is proof that awakening isn't a gain, it's a destruction. Don't search for light, search for what needs to die within you. That is the only door. There is a silent lie in superficial spirituality, the promise that awakening is just blooming and instant peace. But the truth is harsher and infinitely more transformative. The feeling of strangeness, the invisible fear, the ache of watching friends drift away, and the sudden disorientation are the exact symptoms that the journey has finally and truly begun. You aren't broken. You are transforming. That old self, the story you tell yourself, is falling apart, and your panicked mind mistakes this collapse for your own death. This is the moment where silent persistence makes all the difference. Let's dive into the path nobody shows, the essential process of ego death and the return to the beauty of simple life, which waits for your surrender. The greatest tragedy of the search is confusing identity with essence. For years, we've cultivated the certainty of being a separate person, with a name, a history, a unique set of fears and desires. This mirage is our golden cage. Awakening doesn't add anything to you. It subtracts. What actually happens is the breaking of that fundamental certainty. The identity/ego is revealed as a mere illusion, a mental construct useful for practical life but incomplete for the soul. The most terrifying moment of the journey is when the mind realizes the collapse of everything you thought you knew. The house of cards of your personal history crumbles. The mind, stuck in its function of protecting the ego structure, goes into full alarm, interpreting the death of your story as the death of your real nature. This is where the feeling of failure sets in. But how could we fail on the path of truth if truth itself is the dissolution of the idea of a self capable of failing? Khalil Gibran reminds us that the tree that is most heavily laden with fruit bends the lowest. The heavy ego needs to bend and fall. The pain is just the resistance to the flow of that silent surrender. The life we live is often just a map, a representation of reality. The fiction of the personality is the map of your life, useful for moving through the world, but it is not the landscape itself. Awakening reveals that you've been confusing the map with the territory. You clung to the description, missing the experience. The eternal, intimate consciousness is the territory. Your name, your profession, your past. All of that is the map. Liberation isn't tearing up the map, but recognizing that it's not your home. But what happens when the ego realizes its old map no longer leads it home? It doesn't die. It refines itself. Instead of surrendering, it transforms into a spiritual ego, immediately creating new and more seductive strategies to avoid complete dissolution. And this is where we get into the two greatest traps the ego uses to prevent the end of the search. When the ego realizes its old story is in jeopardy, it doesn't disappear. It refines itself. It tries to trade a mundane story for a spiritual one. Spiritual materialism is this trap. You start collecting elevated experiences, rituals, mantras, and insights like trophies. The ego shifts to a higher level, now feeling like the enlightened seeker or awakened one. But this spark of being awakened is different from the total, waking integration into life. It's a golden cage because, no matter how spiritual, it's still a structure of attachment. Another subtle escape is the search for a solid point of reference outside yourself. Turning the master, the guru, or the teaching into an external salvation keeps the structure of separation intact. The separate seeker keeps seeking enlightenment in something or someone that is ahead. However, the core realization is that you are the one you have been waiting for. Freedom is not something you conquer from the outside, but something you discover internally. Reverence should be for the teaching that points to your truth, not for the one who delivers it. In the middle of the collapse, disorientation, and strangeness emerge. You are in a boat in the fog, where things seem vast and unidentified. The ego's instinct is to build new spiritual concepts, new maps and new stories, to try and plant itself on a false ground. You jump from practice to practice, seeking an anchor that doesn't exist. But the true teaching whispers, the emptiness is not absence. It is the womb of the invisible. Persistence now is staying in the void, without running away, allowing the fog itself to dissipate. This persistence in not running from the void and the disorientation is, paradoxically, the only way to cross what mystics call the dark night of the soul. This is the essential phase that nobody mentions, the wildfire that consciousness needs to clear the ground, and which will make your practices and insights stop working. The dark night of the soul is the essential phase. It is the wildfire consciousness needs to clear the ground. It's the moment where your meditations no longer bring peace, and your insights no longer seem profound. This resembles a failure, but it is the sign that the process is working perfectly. It is the fire that purifies. It is the double crucifixion, where the common ego and the spiritual ego are burned. Truth can only resurrect after this death. The fire continues until it hits the last attachment, the identity of someone who is on a journey. As long as there is a seeker looking, there will be separation. The dark night takes away everything that is not essential. It is the burning of the spiritual ego, the end of attachment to your own process. This is where the difficulty of surrender and the emotional cost it represents come in. Remember the poet Gibran. The deepest desire of the heart is to be loved absolutely, unconditionally, and without fault. It is this desire that leads us to the ecstasy of self-love, the recognition of the inner divinity. Surrender is the death of the I that demanded this love externally, so that love can emerge from within. Resistance to the death process is what makes people abandon the journey. The snake that doesn't want to shed its skin prefers the security of the old identity, even if it's tight and painful, over the uncertain freedom of the new skin. They jump to a new practice or a new guru to escape the darkness. Our excessive sensitivity and the pain of feeling every person and the power of the forest are, in fact, the expansion of perception that demands we stop running away and simply feel without identification. When you finally stop running, when you allow yourself to be the pain, the strangeness, and the excessive feeling without the need for an identity to define them, the search ceases. It is then that the greatest irony of the journey is revealed, the pathless path. The greatest irony and difficulty is that awakening is not a destination. There is no place to arrive, but a present recognition. Freedom is through subtraction, not addition. It is the undoing of what was never yours. The seeker is exhausted because they are looking for something that is already there, like a fish searching for the ocean. The eternal, intimate consciousness was never private or individual. The light you seek is the light that is seeking. The return to chop wood and carry water is the most beautiful of realizations. The awakened person returns to living the common life. Enlightenment is a deeper acceptance of humanity, not an escape from it. The Buddhist saying reminds us, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. The mediocrity of the everyday reveals itself as sacred territory. The inside looks out, and the fire becomes defined fire. When the who disappears, what remains is the what, the eternal, intimate consciousness. The game of searching ends because there is no longer a player. What survives is presence, the conscious action that seeks greatness in movement every day. It is the living soul acting in the world, in harmony with interdependent life. This is the goal, the final recognition that the living soul is acting. However, it is vital that we now look at the exact point where most people fail, where awakening is abandoned one step away from freedom. This is where the danger of the pause lies, the illusion that, disconnection is the end, not the beginning. Many reach the threshold of transformation. They taste the void and the disorientation. They think, spirituality has failed me. In this critical moment, resistance disguises itself as lack of time, emotional exhaustion, or the search for a new mental noise. The loss of friends and isolation are natural consequences of a change in frequency, but the ego uses them as proof that the journey isn't worth it. The danger is pausing, is abandoning the journey exactly when the double crucifixion is about to be completed. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that the strangeness is a mistake. It is the portal. The path is not perfection, but lucid persistence. Gibran said, "You are good when you strive to be good." Conscious action and the wisdom of simplicity are the only practice that remains. It is the return to the simple and pure. If the pain confuses you, remember, healing and expansion are possible, and the pain you feel today can be the portal to the life you've always sought. Persistence is just the choice not to leave the fire. Real spirituality doesn't take you out of the world. It returns you to it with more presence and authenticity. Freedom is no longer a search, but a continuous act of acceptance. The pathless path is voluntary simplicity and kindness toward the now. Your living soul is at peace, even if your mind is still trying to build another house of cards. Allow presence to dissolve the need for answers. Symbolic practice. I invite you to pause for just 10 seconds right now. Place one hand on your heart and the other on your abdomen. Feel the weight of your own presence. Let the silence fill the void. Breathe deeply and, as you exhale, repeat in your silence, "I am the one I have been waiting for." You are not broken. You are transforming. And if you wish to go beyond listening and begin to actively interact with the wisdom that guides us on this channel, I invite you to join our community. Participate actively. Respond to the polls launched by the sage and read his short reflections that he publishes. It is in dialogue and sharing that the seed of consciousness grows the most. Your voice, your doubts, and your insights are what move the fertile silence of our temple. If something within you calmed or awakened upon hearing these words, allow yourself to continue. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to walk with us on this road of fertile silence, discoveries, and reconnection. Leave your experience in the comments. Your sharing is also a seed of healing for other hearts. And, to continue expanding this field of presence, we suggest the video eye in the card. May it be a gentle breath on your journey. Peace and light.